Hello, in this video we're going to be labelling parts of a circle. So the objective here is to identify and correctly label key parts of a circle. So here's a circle. The first thing we need to be able to label is the centre of the circle. So the centre is the exact middle point of the circle. So all distances are measured from this point. So this thing here we call the centre of the circle. The next thing I'm going to label is the circumference. So the circumference is the distance all the way around the circle. It's basically the circle's perimeter. So I can label this thing all the way around the edge of the circle, the circumference, and that's just basically the perimeter of a circle. So I'm going to label that the circumference. The next thing I'm going to label is the radius. So the radius is a straight line from the centre to the circumference. So all radii in the same circle are equal. So I'm going to label this thing here as the radius. So next up is the diameter. The diameter is a straight line that goes all the way across the circle, passing through the centre. The diameter is twice the radius, so we need to remember that to work out the diameter, we just multiply the radius by 2. So if I label the diameter, that's going to be this line here, and I'm going to label that the diameter. So we've now covered the most important properties of a circle. However, there are some more important circle parts that we haven't yet covered. So the next one up is called a chord. So a chord is a straight line joining any 2 points on the circumference. We could have this thing here, because this line here connects 2 points on the circumference. So I'm going to call that the chord. The next thing I'm going to label is something called an arc. So an arc is simply a curved section of the circumference that connects 2 points. So I could define this point, and the curved section between them is going to be called an arc. We also have something called a sector. So a sector is a slice of the circle. So for example, if you imagine the circle being like a pizza, a sector is like a pizza slice. So we could say that this thing here is a sector. So I'm going to call this a sector. Something else we have is a tangent. So a tangent is a straight line that touches the circle at exactly 1 point and does not cut through the circle itself. So this thing here is called a tangent, so I'm going to label this the tangent. And the final thing I haven't yet labelled is something called a segment. So a segment is a region of a circle formed by a chord and the arc it cuts off. So unlike a sector, which is made from 2 radii and an arc, a segment is made from a chord and an arc. So this thing here is called a segment. So that's everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video. Bye!